Commissioner, it's really good to have a chance to really talk with you one-on-one. And there are some really urban issues that are specifically important that we need to really talk about. We understand that the way the policies are being structured here in the legislature, under the, I would say, the partisanship of the Republican and the Democratic type of standard of government, that you have been, and the governor, working very diligently to show that there can be some constructive work in terms of leadership. Primarily based upon what we're dealing with in terms of funding, and that people should understand that government is not the only element to get the things done in our community. How have the kinds of ways in which the approach is being done, and it's pretty much an aggressive fashion, able to show the kinds of improvements that will be met within the time frame that you're looking to try to accomplish?
Well, just to give you an example, if you're talking about how are we working in a bipartisan way to make improvements on a timely basis, one of the things that we'll be implementing this year are standards that we think will, by themselves, just the academic standards alone, will have a positive impact. Academic standards relate to what you specifically are asking students to learn, and what you want to make sure that the system is teaching students. That's perhaps a better way to describe it. And when you have standards that aren't really thought through thoroughly, what you end up having is students spend a lot of time on work that's not fundamental, and perhaps not mastering the skills that are absolutely essential. You might also be teaching students in an order that's not developmentally optimal. You may try to teach them something which you should hold off on, so you can teach something which is really foundational first. Well, we're working with all 49 other states across party lines to review our core standards and improve them. And I think by the end of the summer, we'll have new standards approved that within another year's time will be fully implemented across the state. And the standards alone, being more intentional about what we want our schools to be teaching children, will help improve learning by giving students the opportunity to focus on what really is critical, making sure that they're getting it in the right sequence so that they build from one step to the next and can continue to walk up that staircase of learning, if you will. Now, another thing that we're working on is multiple assessments, and we're doing that too in a very bipartisan fashion. You want to have assessments that are available to the student, to the teacher right in the classroom. So when a student is struggling, the teacher has the ability to see, why is that student struggling? What can we do to help? It's not enough just to have an annual assessment to see how the school is doing or how the overall class is doing. You want to have assessments that allow a teacher to individually see the difficulties an individual child is having and have a better sense as to how you can help that child overcome a challenge. So those are just two examples. But even with regard to, let's say, very big things like funding, this year, even though we lost $1.057 billion in federal dollars, which is obviously difficult for districts because they're losing all that federal money, we've seen people come together across parties to increase state funding for districts. We're up $238 million in state funding for districts, and that represents a real bipartisan commitment here in Trenton to making sure that the resources are available for our children. This is at a time, as you know, when overall state revenues are down and we've had to cut in almost every other area. But with regard to education, we came up with some extra, state funding. Now, we're also, again, very working to make sure that our system is more efficient, because you don't want to have these resources being wasted. So we're working all across the state, across party lines again, to try to consolidate services where that can be done and achieve an economy of scale. For instance, in bus transportation, instead of having, if you've got county schools, and you've got charter schools, and you've got district schools, and you have private managed schools, instead of everybody having a separate bus going in different directions, it makes a lot more sense just to go down the street, pick up children on the street, and then drop them off at the different schools that they would be attending. When you have a single, let's say, bus contractor working in common with all the different schools, whether it be county, district, charter, etc., you are able to achieve a tremendous economy of scale. And that means that there's, let's say, an efficiency, which leaves more money available to go into the classroom where the child is. These things are all important. If you waste money, then the money's not available to do good. You want to make sure you do things efficiently, and you keep your eye on the prize of improving education with every particular thing you do.
In return, of looking at the fact of how the freedom of choice movement, in effect, is becoming more appropriate because the national level of government is beginning to emphasize upon what's important about it. And looking at it from a constitutional standpoint, giving the opportunity for parents to make the choices is a lot better than having a monopoly of funding.
Right, absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is every one of us who are involved in public education should make it so that that families want to send their children to our school. If we're not making ourselves accountable to parents where they want to send their child to our school, then in effect what we're doing is we're taking the people's money and we're saying it's for us, not for you. It really should be for the children. The President has made this center point of his Race to the Top initiative, having everything we do be focused on educational effectiveness. It shouldn't be about job protection. It shouldn't be about, you know, what contractors are getting the contracts to build schools, what have you. It shouldn't be about money for adults. It should be about effectiveness for children. And if we make sure that parents have choices, that they don't have to take what we dish out, they can go elsewhere. That creates an accountability mechanism, which makes all of us who are working in public education know that we have to perform. We have to make them want to send the child to our school. And that ultimately drives improvement in every school that's part of the system.
That's great news. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you giving me some time.
Thank you.
All righty.
Pleasure.
Okay.